finish the episode or not yet?
Yeah, I finished it. I just watched it. I really want to go in order of the episode, but on top of mind right now, so much for me is Charlie Carroll's team and that dynamic and that conversation. Because I like Charlie. I'm like a big fan of Charlie. But there's so many people out there that say he has such an ego. And I can see I almost like saw it in the match. He mentioned he grew whether he's lying or not. He said he had a chip on his shoulder from being a kid, from being, but he said he needed to prove that he was like, he felt like his life, he has to prove that he's a good person. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe he's lying, just trying to, but Charlie has built this persona of being like the soul reader. And I don't want to, like, he is really good at it. He's good at the table talk. He's good at about figuring out what the vibe is. But so many times in poker in general, so not just Charlie, but in poker in general, so many times you see people have this read, and then it's really just the hand was playing itself out anyway. So tens versus jacks, like Charlie mentioned, that's a flip. You know, you can't take much credit for it. But the tens versus jack situation is a great spot where it's like that hand is, they're going to get all in either way, regardless.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you know, there'll be a spot where like someone makes a fold, and it's like, well, you did this thing, you had this behavior that, like, you know, I made the fold, but like the guy was going to fold it. You were going to fold anyway. Yeah, and I need to justify it. We talked like last episode. It's like you just feel like you need to justify it so you can save face. A lot of times, the poker players are just like trying to save face to save ego, and it's like the when you don't show your cards, you can say whatever you want. But when both hands go to showdown, it's like that's when big discussions happen, because people are always trying to justify what they did, because now everyone can see. You can't lie about what you folded. You can't lie about what you had, or to like save face or save ego. But when Charlie's in the room with David and it gets to a boiling point, they're talking about, so Charlie like makes the point that he wants to go first, and then Andy and David could flip to see who goes second or third.
Mhm.
And now we may have to call like a theory expert, but I'm pretty sure you want your best player to go last when you're facing elimination, because Charlie's point is correct. Your EV is going to be realized the best over the longest time, but that's just if you're accumulating gold and you want to get the most gold. You want to be able to uh, have your edge be realized over the most hands played against the most amount of time. But you could always be the subject. You could always be subject to variance, which is what happens to Charlie. He ends up losing because of some shitty situations that happen with the hands. And so you want David and Andy to go in there and play against Olga and like potentially get lucky against Olga. But they're even like Andy versus Olga is, they're kind of, I would say Olga's got an edge because she plays more tournaments. But Olga versus David or Olga versus Andy, it's not like a huge gap. So you want those Andy and Lucas versus David and no, sorry. You want Olga and Lucas versus Andy and David, and just let them cancel each other out. And then Charlie, your best player, gets to go in there, and he only has to play one match or only two matches. But he that's less chance for him to just lose due to variance, and then your team is out and eliminated. Like that really makes a lot of sense to me. And then so Charlie wanting to go first seems like a little bit of ego. Then they get to the point where he's on the couch and he's like, "Do you know who you're talking to?" Yes, Charlie, you are like a world-renowned pro with a following and like have built a name that David Williams like doesn't really have. But like to claim that you have no ego and you're like this yoga master, spiritual like the person, and then to be like, do you know who you're talking to? That's not absence of ego. That's like, I'm the fucking pro. Listen to me, because what I'm saying is the deciding point for the team. That's what came off like to me.
I feel he was responding more to David Williams calling him selfish, and that's more like it was like, "Do you know who you're talking to?" Like, I'm not really a selfish person in general.
I feel like there's an oxymoron. Like, okay, I see. I watched it 2x speed, so you're probably correct. You're probably getting to like what Charlie was actually worried about. Charlie said he's had a chip on his shoulder his whole life. He wants to be known as a not selfish person or not ego. And then David Williams is calling, so he's like, "Do you know who you're talking to? I have the least ego in here." But like that statement has ego behind it. It's like I'm the best at not. I'm the best at being modest. Is like kind of what he's saying. Is it
But
not?
I but I still disagree with your theory that the best player should be last though. Like, I think having him first still gets more chance that the second and third best player in the team will have to play less matches than if he goes last. If he goes last, there's still a chance that he has to beat all three opponents. By going first, like it's highly unlikely that he doesn't beat at least somebody. So at least like his other teammates only has to beat one or two players each.
I think so because it's poker. It's tough to say like let's just assume this happens anyway. But so yeah, the variance aside, like if David is going to beat only one person, he's going to beat only one person whether he goes first or he goes last. If Charlie's going to beat all three, he's going to beat all three whether he goes first or he goes last. So I really think it's got to be flipped. Like if you want Charlie to go first because you plan on him beating all three people, but then he ends up only beating one or two, so then David only has to beat one person. Well, like then you send David first. He beats one person and then loses. And then your best player who you planned on having to beat three people only has to beat two people. It's like more of a lock for who you think your anchor is.
I don't know. Like so far, like everybody is agreeing that the first player to go has the most EV, which I don't know what that equates to exactly, but I have to believe like they have more theory than we do about this type of thing and that they know what they're talking about. So I don't think it's just an ego thing that they want to go first. It's really like proven that it actually matters who goes first.
You're
Because
assuming that
no team sent their worst player first. There's
yeah,
no team that did that.
you're assuming that Nikita's team that they agree that Olga is the best.
Well, either that or just like who wanted to go first. Like I'm not necessarily like I'm not sure who's the best in that team, but like Nikita went to go first on the first match, so she probably let the other two decide on who wanted to go first this time. And since Olga was like defeated with her, I don't know, she was really negative about the whole thing. Like they probably want her to go first so that she doesn't get too depressed about the other two losing matches and having too much pressure on her on top of it.
That was another thing that kind of turned me off with Charlie. Like not to keep going back to it, but he he ends the match and he mentions like getting into having to deal with David and all that like kind of put me in a negative headspace and having such little time to go from that negative headspace to play the heads up match. It's like he's indirectly blaming David for him going into this space with a little bit of a negative feeling, which I thought was also kind of like, well, that's not no ego either, or that's not detachment from results or whatever. That's like you're just blaming David for. I don't know, I was a little turned off about that kind of stuff. So back to what you're talking about. Um, that makes a lot of sense that they would opt to do that. They just all I think they said was that they decided who would go first, and so we didn't really get to see if they discussed who the best player is and why they should go first. But that's probably a good reason. If you send Olga first because of the way that she's feeling, like she might be even more like under stress if she has to go last after all of that. So you might as well send her first and let her play. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it seems she was already negative, so maybe like
Yeah.
one of them losing on top of it might just like fuel that negativity and just like I don't know, make her lose for sure in the end. Whereas if she go first, she maybe has a chance at winning a match.
We didn't talk. You gave me you texted me the answer, but we didn't talk about it. You found out it's 10K, 50K, and 250K chips, which like
The
makes the most.
denominations, yeah.
I asked you. It makes the most sense. It's you go by five in every casino. It's you've got $1 chips, $5 chips, $25 chips, and then you've got $100 chips in cash games. And then in tournaments is like kind of the same. They're playing such high numbers. Like some of them are commenting on they've never seen 50K chips before. So that answers the question. I swear though, I swear I saw them like make a 90K bet with like 3 chips. So that didn't make any sense to me because it would be 50, 60, 70. And so that, or maybe it was 50, 50, like it still doesn't make sense. I swear that I saw that. And then I swear I saw someone make a call for 30 more with 1 chip, but that's just, they throw in 50 and get 10K back with. But okay, so that question, you answered it. It was pretty easy to find the answer to that one. It's 10, 50, 250. And I think we had another point that we made a bet and then neither one of us at any point was correct, even anywhere near what we were going to say.
We're bad with our prediction and bet so far.
Yeah. So last episode was the prediction about Maria winning, and she did. She crushed Go Viral, and geez, Maria is such a great point. Like she's been playing forever. Like she's been playing since before female poker players was a thing. Like, before there was a movement of like, hey, we need more females playing poker. And so she had a really good point that she's talked about this on Twitter too, is like just remove the term. And WPA is out there and Women's Poker Association is like doing really good stuff to try and bring women into the game in terms of how you talk about it so it's more enjoyable for a broader audience. And a lot of this, I've spoken to this with Dell and BJ when they were, or with Dell has a lot of input into this. The way that men will berate each other at the table, like already needs to go. The way that people talk to each other on the poker table just needs to go. It's not a women versus men thing, but it's just not just women, but even men that don't play the game, like people that don't play poker, you're not going to find a recreational new beginner that wants to come play for fun and then sit there and be berated by the rec who's never learned how to play and has just been a sore loser for 20 years. It just happens to be that women make up a larger portion of the population of people that are not currently playing. Like it's a very male dominated game. So part of that conversation is just the berating people needs to stop. But then it also, our friend Kylie in London, she goes and mixes it up with men all the time. And she has stories every now and then of like dudes just making comments that are just completely unnecessary. Like comments that are now even worse and more personal because it's a woman. So saying something about looks or something about like the fact that they're a woman, and like it just is so unnecessary. So Maria is just a good poker player by itself. And for her to say like every now and then she has people say like she's a great poker player, she's a great female poker player. It's like, nah, she is just a crusher. And she has been really good for a long time. And it's great to see her go sweep that match, especially the way that she beats Johan and just the way that match played out. I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. It was good to see, and like I think at the core, that's what poker is about. It's about adjusting. So it's not just like having one fit strategy. It's just like adjusting to who you're facing and what they're doing. And I think she proved that really well, especially like for I guess every different opponent. Like kinda, she played definitely super exploitative and just like definitely a very different strategy that we've seen before. And she wasn't afraid to pull the trigger for bluffs against junglemen and stuff like that. So she was just like aware of her image and just like willing to put the chips in when it mattered. I still think the sizing was probably a little bit of a something, but it worked anyway, so can't really fault anything.
Yeah, but sizing is probably the least important of all of the three. Like first you're deciding what your action is, and then the decision to bet versus check is obviously more important than sizing big or small, because if you check then you miss the opportunity period. But so making the decision, the action is way more important. And then betting big or small like is secondarily important. Like do you want to overbet, do you want to go really really big, put max pressure on, or do you want to bet kind of small? And then the third thing is like, if you're betting big, does it need to be 80 or 90% pot? It's like almost inconsequential. Like when you go from 75 to 100% pot to overbet, like there's a spectrum, and like you don't need to be right particularly on there. So I think she made a lot of good decisions in what her actions were going to be, and then adjusting, like you said, exploitatively to kind of like making all these bets where Fedor's in the back. Like that's not a spot to check. That's not a spot to bet. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, if Fedor would have switched against Kaina, if he would have switched to the mindset the same way that Maria did, but it's very deliberate. Like Maria was not just kind of like throwing darts at the wall or whatever. Like she was doing what she was doing for good reason. And so yeah, Fedor might be like, hey, I could probably raise kind of here, but this specific queen of clubs, eight of diamonds combo on this board like isn't a great combo for this spot. Whereas Maria's like, no, I'm just any two I can raise here, because kind of is going to be scared in this spot, and to go to the max at the far end of the spectrum there and be like, well, if I'm going to exploit her, I'm going to do it with anything. I'm not going to exploit her, but only with the two cards that make sense, with the combos that make sense. So yeah, I think it was a clinic a bit. She put on there being the queen.
Yep.
So this one is the episode 9 is the final prayer, because Charlie and his aura, he, for not having ever done that on camera before, he makes a point to be doing that a lot. He's like saying his prayer when the match starts, and then he did some more when Lucas comes
Second
out.
match starts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's not forget. I did want to mention. I saw a lot of parallels in the Nikita's team dynamic, and the military is just something I know. I like, so I'll bring it up every now and then because it's just something that I know. But even just in organizations, like organizational structures, but the practical person and the optimistic person is such a great dynamic to have on a team as far as like from leadership perspective, and to have those conversations like behind closed doors, whatever. But to see Lucas being like, well, we're just gonna win. Like I know we're gonna win, and Olga to be like, well, yeah, I hope we win, but I'm just saying we're in a tough spot. So you can't just be like, hey, let's go out there and do what we normally do. Like we can be positive, but we need to still talk about a strategy on how to do it. So she is the like platoon sergeant or whatever for any, she's the enlisted dude on the ground. For anyone who's familiar with the military would know what I'm talking about. But she's like the dude, the enlisted dude on the ground who's like on the ground with the troops, like to go fight. She's like, dude, this is serious shit. Like I've seen this over and over again. Like this is a tough spot. Like we need to, she knows the different moves that need to happen. And then Lucas is the platoon leader who's like, nah, man, it's all good. Like just like we're gonna get through this. The encouragement, like the pep talk. He's like, go down and give the troops the pep talk. Like we're gonna win the day. Like just listen to your platoon sergeant. Like we're gonna get through this. And then Nikita comes in as like the arbiter of the whole situation. Like, well, let's just meditate on it and let's calm everyone down and get everyone in the space that we need to be. That was so great for her to come in and then be
For me,
like,
the issue there is like nobody was talking about strategy. So it was just like positive against negative. That's what it was.
yeah,
So
we
like
didn't
she's
see
like,
it.
let's be realistic, like we're most likely gonna lose. And like we need a miracle to win. So it's not like we can build up strategy and just like adjust to what they're doing and maybe we have a shot of winning. It's like we need a miracle. So I think that's pretty big. And then she says, I believe in myself, but I don't believe in our team.
Did
So
she actually say that? See, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't
yeah,
feel
she
like.
did say that. So
Oh, that's
I
brutal. Okay.
yeah, I know she didn't mean it as like you two sucks and I know we're gonna lose because of you, but it's really like I don't know. I think it's pretty harsh to say like you should think about your words carefully. Like I don't know, like I'm all for like being realistic and let's just like we're very likely to lose, but let's try to give us our best shot at winning and let's just like try this instead.
So yeah, it's pretty. She was saying on like I believe in my individual skill that I'm going to go play my best, but on
Mhm.
paper this is very much David and Goliath. But I'm giving them benefit of the doubt that Lucas was taking notes, Nikita was taking notes. I'm assuming they talked through a strategy, but they just didn't put it in there because it's the episode's got to be an hour long. Like I'm giving them benefit of the doubt that they talked through a strategy, but I'm saying
Yeah.
it's probably Nikita that was able to come through and be like, okay, guys, you had your moment. Stop clashing. Let's now actually figure out how we're going to do this,
Mhm.
which is great on her part to have the wherewithal to come in and say that and not get caught up in it. Whereas in contrast, Charlie, David, and Andy, like no one there. It was clearly between David and Charlie. Andy has the opportunity to do the same thing that Nikita does. Instead, he just further divides them by saying like, listen, David, I understand Charlie's point, but to your point, blah blah blah, it's also selfish. He's like further dividing them by giving them both kind of support, where he's like, listen, David, you got to understand where Charlie's coming from. He's saying this, your point is also selfish. Like they're both think the other one is selfish. Like what you could be saying is, listen, understand there's a clash here, but we have a match to go win. Can we like table this for a second? Let's talk about poker and then like revisit it. And then you just never revisit it. You
Mhm.
talk about poker, and through the discussion about the strategy, you guys come to you hit a more positive attitude about heading into the match, and then you just never revisit the fact that either one of them is selfish or something, whatever. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's a good contrast between the two, and I mean, I'm a very practical person. I really don't think that that has much to do with it. I think Charlie is a consummate professional. So to go into the match, even from that negative attitude, is like, that's not the reason that he loses against Lucas. And Olga and Nikita's team, like they're very positive. That's not the reason that Olga wins. And it's not the reason that, or it's not the reason that Lucas is able to go in there and win. But there is something to be said about having a good mental state when you're going to perform or compete, rather.
Well, the thing is, the good mental state will help you have confidence in your decisions, and that just like makes things so much easier. So you just like fuel yourself with just like more confidence, and just like you're proven to be right, and everything seems to be working out just because like you're in the zone. When you're negative already, you're already expecting to lose. So every mistake that you make is just like proving your point that you were about to lose, but maybe you wouldn't be making those mistakes if you were in a positive attitude to begin with.
Good point.
So I don't know. Like I don't mind whose idea was best, like David or Charlie's. It's just like I think David was just way out of line just to bring all these emotions out and just like uh cursing at Charlie and just like making things worse than it is. Like you're allowed not to accept the decision, but he's still team captain, and just like a decision has to be made. So it's either one or the other, and you can argue your points, but just to be saying, shut up, I don't want to talk about it, whatever. Like I don't think that's healthy for the team or what's about to happen. Like we need to make a decision. You're allowed to not agree with me, but this is what I'm leaning towards, and like either you have a better solution or you don't, and it's just like
Yeah, he didn't really present any other options. That's a pretty a pet peeve too. Is like if you're going to disagree so hard to the point that you're like insulting a person or saying that their idea is trash, you need to present an alternative, especially
yeah.
considering it's a team environment. Like if you have a political disagreement with some stranger you don't know, sure, you can be like, you're an idiot, and then just walk away. But you're on a team that has to go play a match. You can't just be like, that way is stupid. And then like
Exactly.
that, but I don't have any other better way to do it. So we're gonna go with your way, but just know that I think you're an idiot. Like that doesn't solve the problem.
No. And I think like his point was more about him really not wanting to be last
He didn't want the
than
pressure.
anything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he mentioned it before, like in the first round, like he had to go last, like and outlast Jason Kuhn. He didn't like that so much, and then the other thing, he also was last, and like he didn't like that. So it's like, all right, I get your point, but that's not necessarily throwing out the entire strategy of what we're doing. It's just like you don't want to go last. That's fine. Like we don't need to flip for who goes second if Andy is okay with it. Like I don't think it's that big of a deal. Like I don't think everything should be mixed up just because you don't want to go last.
He didn't really say it in the room either. We
No, he
didn't
said it
even
afterwards. It seems like it was like asked afterwards by the producer or whatever, like to dive deeper into it, and then they cut into some more bits and like showing him go last and stuff like that. So
yeah, what I'm saying as the outside observer, like we don't know what he said in the room because of that, but just going by the edit, the fact that he didn't say in the room, well, I don't want to go last for the, it seems like he was hiding that, which means it's an ulterior motive. So already what he's saying about Charlie's idea is not exactly founded in like any logic about the strength of the idea. It's partially biased to the fact that I really don't want to go last because there's a lot of pressure, but I don't want to tell you guys that. So I just have to say your idea is stupid. And now I need to make up some reason why that actually like is founded in some kind of logic, which I don't really have a lot of because most of it is that I'm just scared to be the anchor again,
yeah,
which
that
is
seems
just
to be my
it's a
take on
tough
it too.
stance to come from. Yeah.
And after that, the match starts, and we see Charlie laying top pair against Olga early on. Uh, I don't know. It seemed it was really weird from the get go. It seems like from what he says, he already has a feeling that she has like a very weak range or weak hand in the moment. And then she goes for a check raise and he calls. The turn, he's openly saying that it doesn't hit her range too hard, which was a 7 on a Jack 9 deuce. It's possible that it hits her range, but like already him knowing that she doesn't have a super strong range. Uh, I don't know. I was really surprised that he folds. I understand they may be facing like tougher response on like 8 and 10ish kind of runouts, but still, I was surprised. Felt like he folded pretty quickly, but at the same time, it could be edited too.
Yeah, I think
But
this is the most interesting spot kind of the whole episode. It's fair to think that maybe Charlie was just thinking of Rivers as well. So like he probably thinks that um he's for sure ahead now, but spades, eights, tens, um a lot of different rivers and overcards too. Like he could have a really tough time calling if she puts out a huge bet. So he may be just avoiding a tough spot on the river and knowing that if he's got an edge pose, like that's not a huge pot here. If he folds here, he's got like plenty of other hands to play against her. Like a lot of that could be going on. I did like Nikita's comment that like you can check raise bottom pair more and call with middle pair. That's kind of an idea that has come out post solver. If we're talking about in Maria versus Andy, the King 7 deuce hand or whatever, like a new standard of what's like a standard play.
yeah,
And that's more of like a standard thing now is you can check raise bottom pair. Your equity is clean, is in like the cards that improve your hand does not improve your opponent's, and it's like really well hidden, well disguised, and a good balance against like your strong bluffs. But what really sticks out to me there is like nothing against Charlie. Charlie has a really good history of what he does, but like you build yourself up as this dude, and the persona around Charlie is like being able to soul read people, and it's like we don't know how long he tanked, we don't know what was going on through his head, but to fold here after saying what he said, it's really easy for him to play it off as like, yeah, I was thinking about all these other different things, but it just seems like in the moment he had a bad read. It's like this hand is the hand that no one talks about. He makes a really good decision against someone else and folds correctly, and it's like, oh, he had a soul read. But it's like you take credit for the ones that are good. You don't take credit for the ones that are bad. You just say, well, that was just variance or whatever. Like, I mean, I don't know.
and
It's a
I
lot.
it felt to me like he was onto her too. Like he did mention like before she bets that this card isn't good for a range, just to try to disrupt her thought process and stuff like that. And it seemed like she reacted a little bit to it. And she's just like getting up some ego. It's like, no, it's good for my range. And let me show you. And she just like blasted those chips out. And it just like seems like, I'm not saying I'm a read expert, but it seems like she gave off something in the moment and that he didn't pick up on it. I'm not trashing him at all for it. I'm just like surprised because I've seen it picked up on very good things before, and just like I was a little bit disappointed when he folded that quickly, and I was like, oh, seems like I've seen something there that he didn't see.
It's a good card for my range.
For mine as well. To 80.
Olga, she's just blasted off first hand. We need a king or a two.
They both have 10-8, and that may just be what she's referencing when she says for mine as well. Is like I'm check raising 10-8 as well, and 10-7 got shot, and so she hits the 7. Maybe, but yeah, I didn't really see anything quick. He does say, that's a good card from my range. She says for mine as well, and then he's just like, okay, well, big size, maybe she's not bluffing, and yeah, I think he missed something. I think we both agree that there, like, can't be the king of soul reads and then like get that one wrong.
So I know he didn't like that hand before, but like the hand before when he called Fedor with 6x on turn, and Fedor had 2 pair e6, like in the previous match before. So I think that spot is way worse because like his pair is so low, like there's so many overcards, so many bad rivers, and he's against like somebody who can definitely go do anything for any sizing. So it's going to be like you're going to be put into a very tough pressure spot by calling with this hand in this situation. But to be folding such a strong pair in a heads up match against somebody who's maybe not uh, as studied, so she may be like making bigger mistakes and stuff like that. And I don't see like that many rivers being a trouble for you. Sure,
Charlie?
yeah, sure, spades might be an issue, but at the same time, like if she's check raising hands with backdoor flush draw, she's probably still barreling without improving to a flush draw. So like spades are not super big concern. 8 and 10x could be an issue, but at the same time, there's only 8 of those. So I don't think like ace king queen are that big of an issue for the situation that it is.
But it's spades in the flop. She's not check raising backdoor flush draw. It's spades in the flop.
Oh, I missed the spades on the flop. I thought it was rainbow.
Yeah. So it's jack, deuce of spades, 9 of diamonds. So I'm saying ace x of spades, queen x of spades with the backdoor straight draw, and then 10-8 obviously, and then 10x of spades with also has backdoor, even if it's just like any actually, I mean, a lot of 10x of spades are great draw. I'm saying like even 10-3 of spades is backdoor straight draw with the 10, but like 10-8 is already a straight draw, 10-7 is already a gut shot, 10 queen is already a straight draw. So like there's so many 10x of spades that are already straight. So like she has a ton of options with a lot of those hands. And so for sure the jack is ahead, but I wonder if in Charlie's mind, because if you're thinking about that range of hands and only that range of hands and not the fact that she's capable of check raising with bottom pair, if she's only splitting her range to be like super strong draws and you don't think she's studied or capable of check raising like just the deuce, then you either have to shove your jack or you call and are put in a tough spot. And then when you shove your jack, like you're just against the super strong draw or the sets or hands that happen to beat you right now. And if he doesn't know her and if he doesn't know what she's doing, and it's kind of that middle ground of like, well, I'm not super sure what's going on, but I know I have a pretty good edge post flop. Like I'll just take some other spots. And so you pass on this one because to lose the chips to call the turn and then potentially be put in a tough spot in the river where you're going to like make a mistake. Maybe it's better to just fold this one and wait for some other hands.
Yeah, I can get the logic behind that. I think I'm probably discounting a lot of spades because like he's perceiving her as being weak. So I don't think like flush draws would be feeling weak on this flop. Like they'd be pretty happy getting the money in and like feeling comfortable about it. So I think this is why I don't see spades being really much of a threat, but I may be assuming too much in this spot.
Yeah, also we have the benefit of not being in the hand. So
yeah, for sure.
When you
but
got the chips,
I've been in these shoes and been doing those things before too.
Yeah, but it's just so obvious that a flush draw is on the board when you're there playing. When you step away from the table and you take a minute, you realize like there's flush draws are not always the threat. And I mean, you were the one. It's funny because I remember this pretty vividly. You were the one that made me realize that, because it's always like, well, there's a flush draw on board, so like I should do these, I should raise or I should check raise or I should whatever because there's a flush draw on board and like how that affects my opponent's range. And you were like, okay, well, what is your opponent's range first of all? And now a flush draw is only ever going to concern 25% of that. So based on pre-flop action, like if it's a 3-bet pot or it's not, whatever, like this is your opponent's range. And then if the flop has 2 spades, 2 diamonds, 2 hearts, whatever, it only affects 25% of what you thought their initial range was. And so if they're capable of doing all these things with like 10-8 or 9x, or if she's capable of check raising a deuce, like it only ever matters 25% of the time. And then in this scenario, it's like jack, deuce of spades, 9 of diamonds, or rip. So like if she's check raising bottom pair, it's never a spade draw as well. So like whatever, like you're saying, the flush draw is not always the main concern as far as how to respond to your opponent's range, but like it is always obvious that it's on the board. And again, in the situation, we don't know what he's prioritizing. because it depends on what he considers to be her skill level and where she's going to split, like what her strategy is going to be with flush draws versus, like, is she just going to call with flush draws, or is she going to play them aggressively, or does she even know that check raising bottom pair is a thing? That becomes a thing too. Is like, dude, does this person even know that that's a move? You know?
Yeah.
But she got second place in the WPT, right? So like, I'm sure she's check raised some bottom pairs before.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any other hands that you remember that you want to talk
That was
about?
pretty much the one that stood out to me.
Yeah, I think that was the most interesting one. We saw a lot of good moves. I'll say that. Like, we saw a lot of people, making moves like on flop and turn. So it didn't even get to the river. I thought that was pretty cool. Robinson folding to Charlie's king, like so it's Queen Jack against King 4.
Yeah.
It's not
I
like
think
he had a soul. It's not like he had a soul read and he pulled it off with like 5-3 of offsuit or something. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the queen expose also like helped with this, so it's like another blocker that comes into play that's like removing some very strong hand in the range of your opponent. So like you can
Sure, but
already
it's
remove some of
pre-flop.
them.
It's pre-flop. Like,
Sure.
every ace is still there. Like,
Yeah,
I get it. I know what you're
yeah.
saying.
Every
but,
way,
like,
every ace is still there, but like you're already removing ace king, ace queen, and ace jack and lower may not respond well to a 4-bet.
oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that's fair. Sure.
Like the fact that there's still a bunch of ace is good. Like he gets to 3-bet a lot with those, but I don't think he's comfortable calling out of position with a 4-bet with
I mean,
all these
just
like ace jack going down to ace deuce.
blocking properties of seeing the queen exposed pre-flop is really not that significant, considering every single pocket pair exists, all the ace and all these other, and I mean, sure.
I think it's somewhat relevant in that he probably gets a better idea of his range after he responds to the 4-bet. So like I think because Lucas
Okay, I'll give you
is
that. I'll give you that.
yeah, Lucas has a lot of experience. He's probably 3-betting the right amount and with the right hands, and he's already seen a few 3-bets from him already. So it's like already I need to throw him off his game, because obviously like calling 3-bets isn't going to help me much, even if I'm in position, especially with a hand of strategy as king 4 offsuit. So like I need to start combating this with all of that.
Okay. In the larger context, yes. Okay, I'll give you that. Because, yeah, Charlie is now adjusting correctly that when your opponent is 3-betting you more, you can either, at a cash game, you can like shut down and just be like, well, I'm not willing to take these risks, so I'm just going to play a stronger range because this guy's 3-betting more, so I'm just going to sacrifice some EV and maybe some chips that I'm winning, and I'll just play less hands. I'll play stronger hands, and that way I can respond to this 3-bet with more value. But this is heads up, and Charlie knows, like, if this guy's going to be 3-betting often, I need to find some 4-bets, and king is pretty strong. Queen removes some decent Broadway hands, especially king queen, considering that Charlie has a king and like the queen's exposed. And so, yeah, in the broader context, it is a piece of the puzzle for sure. So I'll give you that, or I'll give him that, and you make a good point to help me realize that.
Yeah,
we're not arguing. Like, I'm not arguing with each other. I'm just trying to understand. I was
we
really
can argue
just
though. It's not a big deal.
I've got this just fucking point that I need to prove, that like apparently I feel like they keep talking about Charlie being able to like read minds, and it's like, a lot of these hands, when you actually look at them, it's like, this isn't like he's not like diving into the person's brain, but there's a lot of poker that is going on before the read comes into play.
Yeah,
essentially, that's my point.
I agree.
What is there anything else going on? I mean, he fucking beats him in the pot, and then Lucas leaves, and then oh no, Charlie leaves, and then David comes out, and that's it. We don't actually see them do anything. They just talk to each other.
Yeah, that's the cliffhanger.
I don't even think I watched the trailer of the next episode.
Yeah.
Oh, I did, but I didn't see anything interesting. I did watch the trailer, but I wasn't like.
There's nothing interesting. They're just people reacting to what's going on, but like it still doesn't give up anything. It's just like, oh, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like I don't necessarily need drama every time.
Well, they had us so hyped for 5, 6, 7, 8 episodes now. They got to let us calm down and like,
Yeah.
maybe they draw this one out and they play more hands.
But yeah, how do you feel about the next match going over? Do you feel David has the upper hand against Lucas, or the other way around?
I think that honestly they might be pretty evenly matched, but for different reasons. It's cool. This is like when you get an MMA match or something where someone's like a really good boxer and the other one's a really good wrestler. Like David has a massive amount of experience and he's just been in these spots. He's not worried about the cameras. He's not worried about playing these things. He for sure like spazzed with the ace four, but the fact that he's even willing to do that, like, yeah, he probably should have taken some time to process that. But the fact that he's willing to make those moves and stuff, he's not worried about being perceived as an idiot, like on the table or in front of cameras or whatever. So he's got all this experience working for him. Lucas is like recently studied, like just fresh out of like, learning all this new stuff about poker. So whoever gets the match into their arena is going to be the one to have the advantage. So if a boxer is able to create some distance, he's going to jab the wrestler to death. If the wrestler is able to get it to the ground, like he's going to win. So it's not very clear how you do that in poker because of the card distribution and the variance that's at play. But if Lucas is able to size deliberately to create mistakes like from David, or if David is able to exploitatively fold just based on his experience and assuming that maybe Lucas knows the right play but isn't able to execute, like we see this often, is you coach someone on what the theory is behind it, and you show them how this works, but it still takes a long time for them to get to the point where they're like, one, they have to recognize the spot, two, they have to recognize what to do, three, they have to pull the trigger. And that's like a huge thing in poker. So if Lucas is able to pull the trigger in the spots that he needs to, then I think he wins. If he's not, then I think David just like grinds it out with his experience, just like takes over. So it's a tough one. So I'm going to say that David wins, but it would be cool. It would be cool to see Andy up against Nikita and it come down to the wire. Like that would be pretty tense. But I think David's gonna win.
So I think Luke is gonna have more experience for the amount of hands played, like because he plays online. So he's gonna have more experience for the theory and just like more spots played. But I think David has more experience for the live realm. So like you said, the cameras and just like sniffing out what somebody feels weak in the spot and stuff like that. So I think he's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be evenly matched. But I think Luke is gonna win this one, and hopefully Andy wins the other one, so it goes down to the wire and just like
I think if
max
Lucas
pressure.
beats David, then Lucas beats Andy. I think.
I don't know. Like Andy made some mistakes, but I would hope that he talked it out with his partners afterwards and that he won't be doing the same mistakes again. It's just like after he understands like the value of hands and heads up situation more, I think he can still be like a big threat to the rest of the team.
All right. Well, we're going to be able to settle one finally because either Lucas or David wins. So someone's getting a DoorDash sandwich.
All right.
Nice. So our streams
been waiting for that meal.
So our stream's dead now? That's my question. Like, I can't find myself watching another stream after watching this. But like, listen, I think all of the production power that we have available, it is possible for streams like Hustler to set up 2 rooms and 2 tables and then have 2 teams. And you have the Garrett team versus the Andy Stacks team or whatever. And, or maybe you do it on, that would be stupid on one table. But like, I don't know, whatever. I'm thinking of maybe 4 teams and they play, I don't know, 4-handed or something. There is a way, what my whole point is, there is a way that you can have people in a back room watching other people play. You do it like tag team, where the really cool tag team version that they did in Ohio, that's like some tag team tournaments around, is instead of tagging out for your one stack, what they'll do is you play 2 separate tournaments. So let's say you and I are on the team. They start with 140 spots. with 70 teams. And so we are on separate tables, we're playing 2 separate stacks, and then like every hour we switch and you have to play the other person's stack. So like Garrett and Andy could be on a team and they have to switch rooms in the 2 different stacks. And like, or maybe they tag out and they like watch for a little bit and then they have to go play and watch for a little bit, and they can flip between the two. If a hand is boring, and it should be on a delay anyway, I think it's pretty obvious that streams should be on at least like a 30-second, if not a minute delay. So they have plenty of time to say, oh, this hand is boring, or this spot is standard, or just folded pre-flop. So they can cut and show the other place instead, and they can cut to 2 different things. So what I'm saying is I can't find myself watching another like stream where it's just the cards there and they're just talking about it. Like, given that the opportunity is there to do something like this. But
Yeah, I have a hard time watching streams too. Like I did for a long time, but recently I just like feel it's so long. I just want to see like the highlights of it, and there's no highlights to be shown. Like only a few hands every now and then, but I'd like to see highlights of the entire show, like the 15 hands of that show, and just like see it in 20 minutes and be done with it.
so literally just 3 weeks ago, we were like figuring out how to make a stream better. It was like, I mean, I didn't tell, we had some ideas, but another idea that I thought about by myself was, can you play for points? And so they do the VPIP game sometimes, like you need to keep above 30, 35, whatever. They play the standing game, whatever. You could do points. You can do, for every straddle you put out, you could get like a point. So you can play like the mandatory straddle game, or you can play like if you put the straddle out, you get a point or 2 points. So throughout the match, you can do these things where you can get points that doesn't really affect the hands that you play. And so at the end of the match, you can be like the highest VPIP gets 8 points down to the lowest VPIP only gets like 1 extra point. And then you end the match, you have points, and then there can be like a free roll or raffle or something to do with like the more points you have, the more entries, whatever. It's like all these different ways to make a stream kind of more enjoyable, because there's still incentives in a stream. Like I've played the no knit at the reserve when they have all the incentives to play hands, but you still are going to play correct poker. Like me winning money and the money in my pocket is worth way more than me getting kicked off the table on the stream because my VPIP wasn't high enough. So you can do like the VPIP games all day, but at the end of it, like you're not going to be like, there's some maniacs out there, but you're not going to be opening 7 deuce and like trash because you need to keep your VPIP up so you don't get kicked off the table. You just be like, well, today I had a bad card distribution. Like I'll either play next week or I'll play the next 2 weeks or whatever. And there's always the threat of like, well, you won't be invited because you're not enough action. But like, let's be serious. You can only have so many action players and losers before it becomes like an unwatchable mess of just like people doing random stuff. I mean, I don't know. For me, it's unwatchable to have like a bunch of people spazzing and it going 5 hands. That's what happens with some of these stream episodes, is it goes 5 ways or 6 ways. And it's just they're worried about their VPIP, so like everyone's calling, and then it's a 6-way to the flop, and then someone puts out a bet, and then they all tank, and then they fold. Like I would rather just see Garrett and Andy playing a spot heads up, and it may not be as huge of a pot, it may not be a bunch of crazy raises going in, but like that's just what they're doing for some of these, is waiting for a cooler, a 5-handed cooler, so they could be like, oh man, what a crazy spot.
Yeah.
So we were talking about all these ways to make streams more interesting, and then Game of Gold comes out, and it's like, the way to make streams more interesting is not have a stream. Just like either pre-record it or have a 5-minute delay so that you can cut between the two.
Yeah. Make poker fun again. Just make it different. So everybody's doing the same thing. It's not interesting to watch, and it's just like so many dead time during a stream. It's just like, yeah, I think you shouldn't go live. You should definitely edit it and just like make it more interesting. Like you said, bring some twist and plot to it.
It really, we're moving towards leagues. Hustler is going to be a league. Big Bet at Tropicana is going to be a league. Like the reserve live stream could be a league, and it'll be seasons, and it'll be like you have players playing that have a longer term goal. So you could have teams, you could not have teams, doesn't matter, whatever. But instead of watching live just to see what your player does once in the moment, it's like you have the 4-hour game that they play or whatever, and maybe you do it earlier in the day, so it's still recent. You can have a table, like lots of different tables of a total of 40 players, and it gets whittled down to like the final 8 or something over the course of a few weeks. So you still want to see that live because you want to see the end result. Like you can watch the first rounds live to see who's winning the first rounds, and then who moves, and then who moves, and then the final match or whatever could be a 2-3 hours live streamed thing of all the people who made it into like the final match. I think maybe that's what we're moving towards, but it's hard to see a long-term for the streams because they're already changing. Streams already need to have stand-up games and all these extra games because it's very clear that like 4 hours of watching people play poker is like kind of fun. Kind of is being nice. Very fun. Well,
I like it's a wrap.
yeah, okay, cool. Well, I guess I'll talk to you on Friday.
Yeah.
I have to go.
You too. Take care.